And there we go. All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Renee Sanchez, and I'm the Cvsd Superintendent, and welcome to our bi-monthly DEI Town Hall on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we are, kind of experimenting with this format, we do have some guests tonight who are going to be helping us along the way along our DEI journey, and I will introduce them shortly. But they are representatives of Mass Insight. They're the company that will be helping us with our equity audit. And so I wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to share what their plans are, so that way we can get the most possible participation, information, and communication from our community, so that we can best chart the way forward. So I guess let me get some housekeeping out of the way, and then I'll do some DEI updates from the community, or from the district, and then we'll get to Mass Insight. So first, as questions come up, please share your questions with your hosts, and we will be sure to answer them. And we'll be monitoring the questions for Mass Insight as well. But if there are other questions that come up, we will also happily be able to answer them. Please monitor your muting. Make sure that you're muted so that everybody is able to hear without distraction. And then if you are interested in speaking, please raise your hand, and we will call on you. Next, so the Cvsd DEI updates. As you may have heard, we do not have a new DEI director in place at this time. The candidate who we interviewed, or the finalist that we interviewed and selected, did not end up accepting our offer. So we are planning to reopen the search beginning in March with a hiring timeline similar to the start of the school year. But as soon as we have the timeline decided upon, we will publish that on our DEI page on our website, so that way we can keep the community informed of the process. Some of the things that we have been doing in the district, especially with February being Black History Month, thanks to our DEI lead coaches, we have created a 10-day equity journey. So each day we're providing our employees with an activity that provides them an option of videos, articles, or other media, so that way they can review that and then reflect on those thoughts. Some of the activities we ask for feedback on the reflection. Some of them, we just ask them to reflect on their own. For our students, we also provided a grade level set of appropriate activities and utilized some materials from previously. And our schools are also providing additional information and lessons for classrooms. So I'd like to really thank Bageshri and Inika for creating those lessons and creating the 10-day equity journey. In addition to when we didn't have a DEI director come on board, we signed a contract with the district management group to help myself and the lead DEI coaches coordinate the DEI work for the rest of the year, including professional development, including other things that the schools and students may need. And then we also plan on keeping them on board next year as well, so that way when the new DEI director comes in, the new DEI director has a blueprint, they have and a sounding board, so that way during the first year they have some assistance through a peer network, lots of resources, and an organization that does this in many other districts. Additionally, as you may have seen in some of our budget presentations, the administration and the board have currently approved more than $400,000 for positions to be placed at at the campuses, so that way we have a full-time DEI coach or coordinator on each of the campuses, so that way we have the ability to make sure that students have access that if teachers need assistance, they have access. And if the administrators need access as well, there's somebody on staff. The long-term goal is to make sure that the DEI coaches work very closely with the literacy and math coaches so that they're designing a curriculum for all students. And then let's see, and then two more things. Finally, I know that before Omicron, we were talking about adding a couple of committees, one a student-based committee and one a community-wide committee. So now that Omicron is kind of pulling back a little bit, I'll have a little bit more time to work on those over the next week or two so that way we can put those into place sooner rather than later. And then finally, in the last couple of weeks, we have kicked off our equity audit with Mass Insight. So I would like at this time, Robbie, if you are ready, if you and Francina are ready, we can go ahead and begin the presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Sanchez. Yeah, if you can just give us a moment. I believe our colleague Arthur Turner is going to share his screen with us, and then we'll officially get started. It looks like we're seeing your calendar invite. Awesome, there we go. So good evening, members of the Champlain Valley School District and community at large. My name is Robbie Curry, and I'm an engagement manager with Mass Insight Education and Research. I'm joined here by my colleagues, Francina Victoria, Krista Reed, and Arthur Turner tonight. We are excited to be here with you and share a little bit more about Mass Insight, our work with Champlain Valley, and the equity audit process that the district is embarking on. If we can go to the next slide. During our time today, we will provide you with an overview of Mass Insight in our work. We'll be able to discuss Champlain Valley's equity audit objectives, share an overview of the equity audit process and timeline, and then share opportunities in support for stakeholder engagement, which you guys will be instrumental in. And then finally, we would like to open the floor for any questions that you have either about Mass Insight or the process or at large. I know that Champlain Valley is also here to support answering any questions in general around this process. And sort of with that, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Krista, to talk a little bit more about our organization.
Thanks, Robbie. Hi. So a little bit about Mass Insight. Mass Insight Education and Research is a Boston-based nonprofit, but we work nationwide, you can see on the slide. We're committed to pursuing equity in education as an organization, and we work to bring that vision to life by partnering with states, districts, and schools to increase college and career readiness. And we do that by focusing on systems transformation and student success. And we really want to provide academic programs, research, and strategic consulting services to those states, districts, and schools to make that happen. Our commitment to equity is grounded really firmly in this belief that all students can be successful when they're provided high quality education, and that the supports that they need to do that and reach and exceed common expectations are in place. And we know that this means that we have to look internally at ourselves as an organization and at our own approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion within Mass Insight. And so starting in 2018, we began to engage all of our staff throughout the organization in very explicit learning on identity, privilege, bias, and organizational culture, because we realized that to meaningfully engage our organization and our work through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens, we need to build our own individual and collective understandings of these issues. So that is how we function as an organization. If we can go to the next slide. There we go. I wanted to share our audit objectives for our objectives for the equity audit. The first is that we plan to analyze data and gather information about what is currently happening in the district to understand the strengths that already are in place and the areas for growth relative to equitable opportunities for all student populations. So we do that by looking at a variety of sources. Second, we want to prompt reflective conversations about the current status of equitable opportunities as compared to the desired state that the district would like to see, by examining the attitudes, experiences, and beliefs of all stakeholders. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means and what that looks like and who are the stakeholders in a second. And then our final objective is to identify and present opportunities to help improve the practices across the district. We'll provide recommendations designed to focus the attention and the resources throughout Champlain Valley. Again, it could be people, it could be time, it could be money, programs that would help support students, families, and communities and staff. And so we do this in a framework that our organization has when we conduct equity audits. I just want to leave this slide up for a minute or two to allow you to look through the different domains or areas of our framework, so you get a sense of the places and the things that we'll be looking at throughout the audit. Okay, and I think I'm handing off to Arthur.
Thank you so much, Krista. Good evening again, everyone. So at this slide, we're going to talk a little bit about our equity audit process and timeline. The equity audit process will take about 9 months to complete, considering health regulations and possible delays. In phase 1, we will start the equity audit process with the kickoff meeting to gain an understanding of the district's landscape, current reality, and what the expectations are for the use of the equity audit. Following, we will then tailor our process and tools to ensure we will meet the district's expectations. We want to ensure that we're meeting what you need, what you desire, and what you hope to gain from this process. Our practice is to prioritize the local context and take a strengths-based approach to our work, as evidenced by a report that will name the foundational strengths the district already has in place or has invested in to support greater equity. In phase 2, this involves a deep data dive to understand the district, school, and community information and data. We comb through publicly available quantitative and qualitative data, such as policies and documents. We also ask the district to provide us with internal data that is not publicly available to increase our awareness and understanding of district and school conditions. We spend a significant amount of time learning all that we can about your district and the schools to understand stakeholders' local context and lived realities. In phase 3, following the collection of data and artifacts, there is an engagement of district stakeholders. As mentioned earlier, stakeholders range from students to partner organizations. We aim to strengthen all of those who identify as part of a marginalized group. When we reference marginalized populations, we refer to groups that experience discrimination and exclusion due to current and/or historical, social, political, economic power dynamics of oppression from dominant groups. Marginalized populations may include, but are not limited to, race, ethnicity, linguistic, social class, gender, sexual orientation, age, religious, cultural, or ability groups. During this phase, we start by distributing surveys to stakeholders to obtain written feedback and provide an opportunity for those unable to participate in our focus groups and/or have additional comments to share. These surveys help us to understand the district landscape from stakeholders' perspectives and lived experience. In addition to these surveys, there are a series of focus groups and interviews. We keep the needs of the stakeholders in our mind and have flexibility in the formats, accommodations, language, and location where our interviews and focus groups take place. For instance, making phone calls to family members have proven to be successful. We love to engage families and allowing them to have more flexibility in participating in the equity audit process. Holding student focus groups during the day enables students to participate in structured settings. It encourages attendance while hosting virtual focus groups for school staff limits the needs to travel across the district, resulting in higher participation. In phase 4, we start to synthesize all of the information gathered through a project and create a report to share with the district's contacts. Our report will include findings from the process, priorities, and recommendations to support the implementation of equitable practices at all levels. We'll work with the district team and have feedback rounds based on our findings before a school board meeting presentation to unpack audit results. In phase 5, we see promising early signs of impact to support our continuous improvement efforts and those of your district. We're offering a bonus phase 5 to understand the impact of our equity audit partnership. At the end of the engagement, at the activity 4, Mass Insight and Research and Impact team, internal researchers and program evaluators separate from the team that provided services will administer a questionnaire for district and school administrators about their perceived impact of Mass Insight's engagement and experience of working with Mass Insight. 6 months after the engagement ends, a virtual interview with a key informant exploring the perceived impact of our work and how our work can improve in similar projects in the future. And then even after that, 1 year after the engagement, we will continue to support with an administration of a short student and staff survey drawing from our original survey questions to measure growth. On this slide, we have stakeholder engagement. We believe and emphasize the importance of stakeholders' voices throughout the equity audit process. As part of phase 3, we seek to engage district stakeholders such as students' central office, school-based staff, community partners, and families through a series of focus groups, interviews, and surveys to ensure that all community members have access to these materials and share their feedback. We make the focus group and survey accessible. The team can accommodate translation services based on language needs, and focus groups and interviews will be remote to ensure the safety and accessibility of all identified stakeholders. At this time, I will turn it over to Francina and Robbie.
Thank you, Arthur. And this concludes our presentation in terms of Mass Insight and our process. And we would like to open the space for any questions that we may answer. And you are able to take down the presentation so that we can see everyone.
Are there any questions around not only what we've presented, but also, please raise your hand. We have two slides. So if you want to do the physical hand or the reaction hand, you're definitely more than welcome to. Elizabeth Hunt.
Hi there. Thanks so much for the presentation. That was very helpful. I'm wondering, you might have mentioned how long to get to phase 5, and in the past with groups you've worked with, communities you've worked with, how long does it take to do those follow-up stakeholder surveys and assessments and see real cultural change and measurable improvements?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So one thing I will say is that this phase 5 is new in our equity audit process, and it has really stemmed from people wanting to know, what do we do next? So oftentimes you're provided with a report, you have recommendations, but that next step, and how do we really assess and benchmark our progress and the impact of this work hasn't really come to the conversation. So this is something fairly new, Elizabeth. So unfortunately, we don't have that much background data on that specific point, but I will say that the process itself has been created to really acknowledge that an equity audit is not going to fix a district's issues right away. People change in a district, and we really want to bring focus and attention to the priority areas and how a district is really intentionally seeking to understand equity at all levels and the impact of their work, and also the work of us as consultants, because at the end of the day, we want this partnership to really support students and the Champlain Valley community as a whole. And hi to your other attendee. Bonnie?
We see Bonnie's hand.
Hi, I'm sorry. Renee, can you mute?
We have the
Sorry
question
about that.
directly on the chat.
I'm asking a question on behalf of someone else who put it in the chat to me. It says, will there be some recommendations in September that can be implemented for the 2022-23 academic year?
That is a great question. And the district is undergoing a lot of changes. Superintendent Sanchez says one that I can pass over to you. We would love to hear how the district is looking to intentionally use the equity audit findings.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So one of the other things that is going on concurrently with this equity audit is that we will start our strategic plan feedback, our interactions with the community starting in March. That is when we will kick it off kind of at central office, but then we'll start having events where we're asking the community to give us that information back to us so that we can plan the next 5 years. We'll have the information from the equity audit in June or July. And so we will be able to take those learnings and make it a part of our strategic plan process. The strategic plan will wind down and we'll be able to, the plan is to present it to the board for a vote, the final product in February 2023, which had to get the year straight, in February 2023. So the goal of the equity audit is to continue to make sure that as we're designing what we look like over the next 5 years, whatever is actionable, we can put into place in the fall. But long term, we want to be able to make sure that we're doing the recommendations and budgeting for them properly and finding the right people to shepherd them through the process. And of course, that's why we joined with Mass Insight for that feedback and making sure that we're implementing things so that we are learning our lessons, so that way we can have data to keep track of the implementation as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Sanchez. And we actually have a question in the chat, which I can address. And then Angela, thank you so much for raising your hand. We'll go to you. So the question in the chat is, how do you identify community partners? And this is one where we actually rely heavily on the district. We want to understand what partnerships has a district utilized in the past, what are active partnerships, and then we go from that list to share surveys and also invite them to participate in a focus group. So we really rely on the district to identify community partners, and these may be at the district or campus level. Angela?
Hi there. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm Angela Arsenault, I guess, as you can see on the screen, and I'm here as a parent, but also as the school board chair. So it's nice to sort of meet you all. I'm really excited that you'll be working with the district, and really very curious and interested to see what we'll find. And in that spirit, I wanted to ask what maybe methods of communication you have found to be effective in terms of reaching out to various stakeholders and stakeholder groups. What you might, if you'll be recommending communication methods to the district, or if that's if you actually do the outreach once the district has identified stakeholder groups, like kind of how that works to really reach the people that need to have their voices heard.
Really great question, Angela. And I just want to uplift the fact that I am super excited to see board representation here and also board support. I think the question around change was an appropriate question. And I think when you see the level of support that we're starting to see through this DEI Town Hall, just with Renee leading this for the district and with the support of your board and board president, I think is just phenomenal. Now to answer your question, we engage in multiple methods of making sure that we can reach different stakeholders. And so first, it just starts with a strong communication plan that we develop with the district, specifically around stakeholder engagement. And again, we go through many different ways, such as translating things into different languages, should that be necessary for the district, to ensure that everyone is aware of this process. Even within that, we have several different venues and spaces in which people can participate. And so we definitely have focus groups that can be identified based on a range of different identifiers or identity markers, if you will, that provide space and comfort for community members, students, families, and so forth. In addition to that, we create and administer 6 surveys that customized surveys that are targeted to each of your stakeholder populations. And that also goes through translation as well. We've also found phone calls to families to be effective as well. And so when families either are unable to participate in surveys or participate in focus groups for whatever reasons, be it scheduling conflicts, we found that our 15-minute outreach via phone call, and again, that is done in different languages as well, has been effective as well. And so we remain flexible, and we continue to remain flexible through this process to make sure that we are engaging that stakeholder group. Krista, who's our data analyst, will be actively monitoring that, and we will continue to revise our approach as we are engaged in this to make sure that we are thoughtful and strategic around getting a representative sample population from different stakeholder groups.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robbie.
I see a few more hands. Can I get Christine? I believe that's how you say your name, Christine.
Yes, thank you. My question's 2-part, and it might be more directed towards the district than towards Mass Insight. But how will the district identify community partners? And because I understand Mass Insight's going to be expecting the district to do that. So how will the district be doing that? And the equity audit is important. I think we all know that. At the same time, we don't have a DEI director. We don't have coaches in many of our schools. The work seems to have stopped in the interim. So what are we doing to help in the schools now? And how is the process going with the reconciliation, remediation, whatever process it was at CCS? Because my understanding is that the environment is very, very difficult there, and that people in that school are suffering, and there needs to be healing. And I don't understand how we can engage in equity work without that healing.
I will go ahead. I will be happy to take those questions. Let me answer the first one first about community partners. So that's going to be one where we're going to reach out. I'll reach out to the board and find out who they believe we need to contact. Of course, our principals and our PTOs, and find out which I guess companies, which organizations have been providing us with assistance. And again, with Mass Insight, I'll need to know, are these partners that are contributing time and equity, or are these ones that we pay and they're considered a partner because they do a lot of work in our schools? So that would be something where we'd have to have that conversation. The other piece is, I think it's also going to be really important to reach out to our town managers and our select boards to get their information, who they think we need to bring to the table, because there may be community partners out there now who would like to be partners, and it would be good to hear from them at this time. Now, the second piece about the equity work, I would say that yes, we definitely have slowed down a little bit, or slowed down from last year, because our DEI coaches last year did a fantastic job at all of the campuses, and right now it is right now it's the two lead coaches, Ainika and Begeshri, and myself, doing this work. And so we are getting it out as much as we can. Right now, I would say that the equity work that we're really focusing on is making sure that we're looking at the big picture, hence the equity audit, hence working with DMG to make sure that we continue the work, and we're getting ready to make sure that our teachers and our students have access to the things that they need to be successful. So, I mean, other than that, I think that that's where the work can be done. We would, and as we reopen the DEI director position and plan for somebody to come on board in July, that is the reason why we're working so tightly with Mass Insight and the coaches to make sure that we're in a position where when they come in, the work is evident and we will be successful. The final piece that I can talk about with the environment at CCS, we have been working with a group of teachers on the campus, as well as with the Williston Community Justice Center to work on the environment at the school. So there is some progress being made there, and at this point, I really can't talk any more about that. But we are working with those two, with the school and with the Williston Community Justice Center to take a restorative approach at working on the environment at CCS.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Superintendent Sanchez. I know our colleague Krista had some questions come to her via the chat that I would like to have her surface and then answer.
Yep. The question is, what is the makeup of the focus groups? I think one of the earlier answers may have started to answer that question, but we conduct focus groups with groups of students, with groups of staff members. If there is a need for a focus group with community partners, those can be done as well, and with parents. And so with all different types of stakeholder groups that you saw on the slide, the makeup of the focus groups, we try to offer a mix of both like affinity or identity-based spaces for those who want to opt into those, and then some that are just more general, like a students groups. We may do focus groups with different student groups throughout the district. For example, we hear that there are some very active student groups, and so those may serve as their own sort of focus groups, if that makes sense. So it's very customizable to who the stakeholders are in the district, but that's generally our approach.
One thing I will add to that is we also want to understand the experiences of middle schoolers. So we don't interview elementary school students just from past experiences. That hasn't been the most helpful experience for them, but also in terms of gathering data. They're cute, but not yet aware of DEI and these other terms. So we start with middle school students, and we really do our best to narrow down on all elements of diversity. So linguistic, ethnic, racial, ability, and we focus on students with special education who are in the special education programs, students who may be newcomers. The same goes for educators. So we interview support, instructional and non-instructional staff. So anybody who's a paraprofessional, we have specific groups for that. Those who are outside of the classroom and in support roles, we have a space for them as well. For teachers, depending on the grade, so we do it by grade band. We also do it by specific content area when feasible. And we have separate spaces for school leaders and central office staff so that we can really create spaces where people feel comfortable enough to share their insight and feedback. And if those spaces don't yet make people feel comfortable or able to speak up, that's when we continue to push the survey as a means to gather additional feedback. Krista, was there another question that you received?
I think just the follow-up was, how are folks chosen? And I think you've got into that. We're intentional about making sure that they're small and intimate enough spaces where people can be comfortable and open with us, and also allow people to opt in via the survey. There are questions, would you like to participate in a focus group if you haven't already, been a part of one? So people can opt in.
Thank you. And Yasamine Gordon, And please let me know if I'm not saying that correctly. I know that you had your hand up.
Thank you. You absolutely said that correctly, and I appreciate that. My question is also regarding the focus groups, and in particular, I just wanted to know what efforts your organization and the district are going to make together to reach families who possibly have left the district, also employees and students who have left the district recently, to talk to those folks about their reasons for leaving.
Mm-hmm. So the majority of the conversations that we have are with current staff members, current family members, and students. If there was an opportunity or a way for us as partners with a district to really identify students who have dropped out in the last year or two, that's something that we would really discuss. I'm not aware in terms of human capital laws that would impede our team from contacting a former staff member or family member. That's one that we haven't done in the past, and definitely we want to be mindful of people's privacy. I don't know if too many people would be happy to be contacted by a third party if they've left the district, but Yasmin, that's a great point of reference, and I really appreciate the question. I think that's something that we would have to discuss furthermore and really legally understand what are the limitations that we have as a third party.
Sure. I just had one other question. Sorry about that.
No.
Who is going to be facilitating the focus groups? You talked of, making sure that it is a safe and welcoming space. And we all know, or I think most of us who have done this type of work before understand the importance of having a facilitator who is neutral and who doesn't have any relationship with the participants. And so I'm just curious, what's the process in choosing, or who, maybe you already have a plan for who the facilitators are going to be?
Yes, so members of our team will be facilitating all sessions, and we have 2 staff members to ensure that there is accurate note-taking and that people feel comfortable enough. So we don't ever involve district staff to participate in these because of anonymity, but also we want to make sure that, we're the ones capturing the notes and synthesizing all the data that we gather through these conversations. So it will only be our team. And if we need a translator from a different language that we don't currently have in-house, that's when we would use one of our partner contractors to support the work.
Thank you.
And I think sorry about that. And I think just to quickly piggyback off that, I think what Francina just shared was key. We take every effort to preserve confidentiality and anonymity in all spaces that we engage with stakeholders. And so whether that's through surveys, focus groups, interviews, the report out does not have any identifying information that gets shared with the district. And when we synthesize reporting in the report, we look for general trends. And so again, we take every effort to ensure not only confidentiality and anonymity in the reporting, and to the extent that even those structures may not feel as welcoming for people, we do offer that one-on-one interview phone call for those individuals who may not feel comfortable within a space. I saw Tina, I saw your hand just lift on video.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Hi. It's like you read my mind. I was thinking about the confidentiality piece, and I guess this is a question/comment. There's like a handful of us in terms of BIPOC in the area. So even when people are trying to be confidential, it's pretty transparent and easy to kind of figure out who's who. So I just thought I would just mention that. I'm sure you've thought of that, but I think as much as we try to be confidential, there are not a lot of us. So
I appreciate that, Tina. And just to be very transparent, we spoke about Mass Insight and Mass Insight's own journey within this space. And we recently internally were asked to take a survey as well. And I spoke up, I said, I'm the only Black male engagement manager. There's no way that my answers can be anonymous, right? And so I share that to say we are very aware of those dynamics. And once the data points start coming in, we will continue to think about ways to continue to preserve anonymity. And so if, for example, there is a person that shares a very identifiable classification, that will definitely be preserved in some way so that, again, it is not made public or easily identified. So thank you for sharing that, but very aware of that.
Awesome, thank you.
I see Elizabeth Hunt raising her hand.
Ravi, that was so well put. I mean, kids we're talking about see everything. You can't hide from them, right? You talk about anonymity, but they see likenesses, differences, power struggles, like teachers coming, going, etc. So I think it's so great you're going to be working with middle schoolers. I'm a parent of a 3rd grader, a 7th grader, and an 8th grader. And I'm also the health advisor for one of the schools and have helped the district with health stuff. So I'm really so aware of how your mind, body health is related to how you feel as an individual, how you feel in terms of acceptance, self-esteem, having an ear, being able to express yourself, feeling safe. Hello, right? That's huge. So hopefully, like in this extremely white state, it's like one of the smallest states and one of the whitest states, starting out with people who are really trained and have, like you say, personal experience in being underrepresented, minority, however you put it, to get kids to open up about what that's like and what the future holds and what skills they need and who they can talk to. I mean, all those things I think is really important. I don't think, Superintendent, we've done this yet with a skilled group in Cvsd. So as a parent, I'm looking forward to that. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure that our team is able to get to other obligations. So I see a few more hands here, and then Superintendent Sanchez, I'm wondering if there's a way that if there are additional questions, more than willing to figure out a way to capture those, and then we can answer it through other form, but want to be mindful of time here. I see Josh, DT USA. You're on mute. There you go.
Okay, sorry. And actually this one is probably for Superintendent Sanchez. So if you need me to wait, I'm happy to do that.
Please ask your question.
Okay. Mostly it's how much of the report or all of it will be shared with the community?
So that is a wonderful question. My goal is for as much of the report. I don't see any reason why we should share the entire report with the community. So it'll, this was one of the things that we talked about last week. There's going to be, like, if you want to read the 100+ pages that get produced, or if you want to see kind of the high points slide deck, we'll have both available, because I know that at some point, as we get closer, we'll be putting it on the board agenda so we can present it to the board. And then we'll also have all that information for everybody, because I think this is, remember, it's going to inform our strategic plan. And so the more that the community knows about where we are on the equity journey, the more we can place the steps along the way in our strategic plan.
And so as a former middle school teacher myself, I am perfectly okay with silence, but reading the room. Again, we were very excited to be here today, and barring any other questions now, we do welcome you guys to share with the CVS district and community any additional questions. And we just look forward to engaging in this process. Again, you will see our faces again. We will be the ones administering the surveys, facilitating focus groups with you all. You'll hear our voices across interviews. And so we are just very excited that you guys have welcomed us into your community, and just very excited to be able to go on this journey with you. I'll now pass it over to Superintendent Sanchez to close us out.
Sure. And so if you have any additional questions that may arise regarding Mass Insight, please feel free to email me so that way I can forward it to them directly, and we'll be able to get those answers to you when they are answered. So I'd really like to thank Arthur and Francina and Robbie and Krista for joining us tonight. And like they mentioned, they will be around, and you'll be seeing more of them in the district, I hope, over the course of this semester. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
So a quick time check. We've got about 15 minutes left. So if anybody has any other questions that they would like to ask of the district, I would be happy to take them at this time. So either raise your hand using the tool, or okay. All right, Mary.
Yeah, can you tell us anything about why the candidate didn't take the position? Was it related to the job or another?
I don't know if I am really comfortable. I mean, it's not, I can say that it doesn't have to do with the job, but so that's the piece that is, this position is in very high demand around the area and around the country. And so there is a very qualified candidates are they're in demand. And I guess that's what I can say. Let's see. Or if you have any questions about the budget, we can talk about the budget for the next little bit too. Christine.
So I appreciate that you're doing the high level work. I really do. But I also feel like work needs to be continuous in our schools. And I guess I'm just wondering how that work can be picked back up when you have community members who've always worked with the school, who are interested in working with the school, and the impression that they're getting right now is that everything's on hold and there's not an avenue for that really.
Well, I guess I would like, you and I have a relationship where we can communicate. Please feel free to either send me an email, let's have a chat, because I think there's some, I would like to find out more about how the community members are hearing that, or if it's something they're seeing, well, then clearly, yeah, that's something we need to work on. But I guess right now, the nature of I guess the work is that because we don't have the grassroots, the ability to have grassroots on every campus, and we haven't had a director and the person who is working with the lead coaches to do the work is absorbed in other capacities as the superintendent. So things have been kind of slow to roll out, which is why we signed the contract with DMG to help guide us throughout the rest of the year, so that way we would have I guess a fourth voice that can help guide the work, so that we can pass it to the campuses and to the teachers, and of course continue to try to get the work out to the community level as well. And yeah, like I said, I'd be happy to have a longer conversation about this with you.
Yeah, let's schedule something, because there was an operational group doing some of this work in concert with CCS, and in light of everything that's happened, that has been put on hold, and for all intents and purposes, I'm not getting any indication that it'll be picked back up.
Thank you. Yes, Tia.
So I really appreciate today's presentation. It was really helpful just to sort of see the timeline. And they seem great. I mean, they've got a really great energy. I guess I just have a little comment, and I would love in some way, somehow, to see something next year. To see some, with academics and extracurriculars. I mean, we've had a lot happen this year. I would love to not have our juniors and seniors and our sophomores and freshmen coming in to have to wait. Speaking for myself, my kiddo's a sophomore. She's going to be fine, but she's probably not going to benefit a ton. She may do some work to help what's going to happen for students to come. So that's just a little plea. I hope that there can be some changes or something that demonstrates that we were heard this year. And again, all the work that you're doing now is evidence that we are being heard, but just would love to see ways that students can be better impacted next year when it comes to the athletic process, and our thoughts about DEI and how that lives in our academic, athletic, and extracurriculars.
And also I would like to include, post-graduation plans, flexible pathways, things like that too. So that way, we're taking into consideration certainly extracurricular activities, but also access to academic opportunities as well. So
I hear that feels like the 5-year. I don't think you can do something in September, and I get that. I think that there are some small tweaks that could happen in 22, 23. So that's my only point. So I think that everything that you're doing looks promising. My only request is, there are some things that we just know that we don't have to wait for an audit necessarily. There's some small things that as a community, I think that we know and would just love to see some changes, and then maybe just some communication about what those changes are. So I just wanted to share that. And I know you and I are hopefully going to talk again soon.
Yes.
Which I look forward to.
Thank you, Tia. Again, any questions about the budget? We've got several board members here who would be happy to talk about it. No, just kidding. I'd talk about it for you guys.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Of Tia and maybe Christine too, and tell me if this is not the place to do that, but I'm feeling like you're here and we're obviously invested and interested, and I would, and please tell me if this, I mean it, like, tell me if this is not the place for this conversation. But I would just love to hear from both of you and from anyone, like, what are those things that are right top of mind for you? I think because we all have our ideas about what those things might be, and if you were comfortable sharing, I wonder if you would, and of course, totally understand I'm putting you on the spot, so we could talk later, but I'm just like, I so appreciate your comments and your efforts, and I would love to know what would feel like progress to you. What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it feel like for your students?
I'll just say that, I don't feel put on the spot at all. I would love for us to figure out how to not cut opportunities for our students in athletics and extracurriculars. I think that, what happened this year was really, really hard and really sad. And I don't think that's been really addressed. I feel like something as simple as, why is it that ninth graders have 4 years of potential opportunity while, and juniors, right, end up with one option. So juniors can do varsity or nothing, and ninth graders can do JVB, JVA, or varsity, right? So that in and of itself, even if the best player was chosen or whatever the case may be, it's not great. Even in terms of use of space, how many students are getting use of some of these facilities and these spaces percentage-wise? So Is there a way, and I'm a theater Amnesty International kid, so I know nothing about athletics. I'll put that out there. But is there a way that our JVB could be a rec option where we don't cut anyone? And if we get 20 kids, then we've got scrimmages that are happening in JVB practices. Or, again, I just wonder if there's some, juniors, if they're not able to represent the school through varsity, can they still have an opportunity through JVA or a rec option? So it just seems like when we have a school system that is struggling with, honestly, drug use, depression, all these different things, and we have kids that want to do stuff, it doesn't feel like it aligns with DEI to cut juniors, particularly that's a stressful year. So juniors and seniors, I feel like need a lot of support. So that's something small. I would love to see just a change to that next year. And with the understanding, like, you might make a change and we might learn, okay, we need to change it again. But any kind of change around that, I think would demonstrate that we were heard, or at least I would feel like the student that went through what she did, it wasn't in vain, that there's some changes made.
No, piggyback on that. No, I appreciate you going first because it gives me an opportunity to, as I said, piggyback. Most of my most pressing concerns are about things that happen right in the classroom, but I do want to touch on the sports thing. When you have a coach that is employed by a club and most of the varsity team plays for that club or rivaling clubs, that right there is an indication that kids that can't afford club sports can't get the skills or don't have the connections to be taken seriously when they try out. And I'm going to say something very controversial, and I can't believe I'm saying it in a public meeting, but I'm going to say it.
As long as it's not about an individual, please.
No, it is not.
Okay.
But when I started going to games and realizing that not just on the CVU team, but on the majority of teams that we play, including CVU, all the brown and other children of colors were playing in defense. And you cannot tell me that there's not one of them that doesn't have the skills to play offense. And these are children, some of whom I know play in clubs, and they don't play defense anywhere but on their school teams. It just stuck out. So that's all I'm going to say about sports. And like I said, I know it's a very, very controversial statement, but you can't not see it when you're looking for it. And I don't want to say I'm looking for it, but once you start to feel like something's awry, and then you are paying attention, you can't not see it. That said, my concerns are around what's happening in the school building during the day. I'm talking about assignments that aren't reviewed by anyone and cause harm to our kids. I'm talking about assignments, especially about issues that we should know better, and there should be review around immigration, migration, the fact that, we're trying to call attention during February to Black History Month, but as a result, it puts a spotlight almost on the few kids of color that we have, and they experience more issues with other kids during that month than any other in the calendar year. We dread when February comes around, because if they're going to get a comment in school, it's going to be in February. The fact that our teachers aren't getting the professional development that we know is out there that can help them not create some of this unintentional harm. It's out there. And then there's So there's the curriculum review, there's the professional development piece and how they work together. And then when something does happen, that our response isn't much of a response. You know, we don't ever hear of a resolution. We're told something happened. We're not told what happened. And we don't know what happens as a result, but we're told there is a resolution. It's very dissatisfying. Our kids are upset. They come home, they tell us something happened, and they feel like there's no justice. So just even how we respond to incidents when they happen. So those are my three top things.
Thank you. I really appreciate both of you sharing your thoughts.
I can talk to two of those right now. So the first one having to do with the professional development, that's part of what the DEI coaches and DMG and I are going to be working on over the course of the rest of this year, so that way we can get that professional development in place before the school year finishes, so that way when the teachers return, they will have access to it. One of the things that I think is incredibly important is that, because like you were saying, we need to have every teacher go through similar learning. And so in order to do that, it's somewhat of an undertaking for time and for budget, but we want to make sure that we do that right. And so by having DMG as a partner and then the three of us working together, we're going to make sure that is out there for everyone to see. Let's see. Teacher not getting professional development. Not create. There was, I think, I'll find it. I can't read my own writing that I wrote down, but I'll decipher it over the course of the evening, and I will get back to you on the other one that I felt for sure. Like we needed to make sure, and again, we'll set something up really soon so we can continue our conversation.
And I just want to throw out there, the professional development cannot be one and done. It really needs to be an ongoing thing. And quite honestly, there needs to be a structure like you have in a social service organization of supportive supervision, where a teacher who's struggling with something or doesn't know how to present something in her class or thinks something might be tricky with a particular student can go and talk it out with someone and not worry about how that looks, that they have that. The idea was originally that the coaches would do this, but I don't know when or if that's going to become a reality, right? We don't know if the funding is going to be there. So there really does need to be an ongoing support.
Absolutely, that's the key, and that's why we're placing people during the school day, not having as opposed to having stipended DEI coaches, which they have to do their job during the day, and then they can do additional work when they have time, or they're doing both at the same time and are overwhelmed. So that's the ideal way that we're planning on going forward. Okay, it's 7:35. So if there are any final questions, we will happily answer them. If not, please feel free to send me an email and we can answer that directly. And Christine and Tia, you and I, we have kind of a time, we're working on it. And then Christine, I need to set up a time with you to follow up.
Sounds good. I'll look forward to an email.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight to our second one. I think one of the we will decide what the next one, the next DEI will look, next DEI Town Hall will look like in April. But Christine, you did raise a good point about curriculum, so maybe that's something that we can touch on then.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great night.
Thank you all. Thank you, Superintendent Sanchez.